Well, hello there. Welcome to the channel. Welcome in if you're new. I'm Shauna, and it's a good one. Today's video is about a new project, and I'm very intrigued to hear what you think, and I think it's going to be fun, and I'm excited to announce it to you. In the last Contentment update, my Year of Contentment No by update, I spoke about how I've been really focusing on the stuff, like contentment with stuff. And I think I also mentioned this in my decluttering 350 plus things video. And what I really want to do is focus on contentment of the self. In essence, I'm asking how can I be content with who I am? And I had such a fun time with the other two contentment projects, the Makeup Minimalist project and the Decluttering 350 Things project. The makeup one was more lighthearted. The Decluttering 350 Things one was not as much, but I still liked both of those and reflecting on them. So we're gonna do another kind of experiment. So the order of operations of this video is as follows. I'm gonna talk about the project, give a little definition of what it is, what I'm doing, give the outline. Then I'm going to talk about the goals for the project. Then instead of calling them rules, I'm calling them guiding principles, things I'm hoping to strive for and the kind of rules, but we're not being so rigid about it. And then I have a couple of hypotheses about how I think the whole thing's going to go. So when it comes to contentment, there's two kind of main categories, in my opinion. There are the detractors, the things that, threaten our contentment, that kind of are the detractors from it. When you're feeling good, feeling fine, going about your life, and then all of a sudden you come across something and you're like, oh my God, everything I have isn't adequate. And maybe something happens, or I guess the equivalent in the personal life would be something happens. Maybe somebody criticizes you, maybe even if it's helpful or even if it's necessary or true. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, and all the self-doubt comes in, or all of the bad negative thinking comes in. And then the second kind of area is the positive effects, the things that motivate us to continue or start doing something, the things that make us, that foster our contentment and make us maybe feel more interested in pursuing contentment and maybe help us keep in that state of mind. This project is going to focus on the latter of the two. We're going to focus mostly on things that I believe, or maybe you believe, or maybe we've been told have positive effects. So when it comes to personal contentment, contentment of the self, who I am is good enough, or I'm happy with who I am. That's a big, huge category to even think about, and so much goes into that. There's so many, even when it comes to things that negatively affect us, there's so many narratives or things that have sat with us through life that can affect how we feel about ourselves. And I think no matter what, there's no way to unpack all of that in 4, 5, 6 weeks. That's a lifelong journey kind of thing. Things that take weeks, if not years, to do. This is going to be a 6-week project, and right off the bat, I guess I want to be clear about the fact that I'm not going in here to really kind of get to the bottom of intergenerational trauma. This does not really feel like the place for that, and not I understand the scope of the project is what I'm saying. I just kind of feel like that disclaimer had to be out there. But when it comes to personal contentment, the thing that I've heard the most is you have to do the work. And the internal work, the work of the self, the reading, the meditating, the seeing the therapist, you got to work on yourself and, challenge the negative beliefs, challenge negative mindsets, challenge the things that keep us insecure, and also kind of consume the kind of content or participate in the kind of getting in the positives and keeping the positive people in our life. But there's this kind of push-pull of the challenge and the consume more of the people and the things that uplift you. But at the same time of the you gotta do the work, I've also heard things and have talked about how dressing a certain way can really impact how we feel about ourselves. And I've even talked about just like swooning over clothes and really feeling and knowing what joy feels like with my clothes. And I'm talking about this not so much in terms of the amount of things I have brings me contentment, or I'm content with the number of things I have. I'm talking about the way that external factors can influence how we feel about ourselves and like who we are. And so I really believe that there are external factors, things like wearing clothes that we love, that we think are beautiful, can make us feel confident or beautiful, or can contribute to that. And I think the same thing is true with makeup. For so many of us, makeup is a hobby and something that brings us joy, and participating in that joy every day can make us feel like more joyful, happy people. Over the next 6 weeks, I'm combining the external factors with the internal factors to see how they influence my own contentment, my own personal contentment with who I am. Not the what I have, but the who I am. So, for the first 2 weeks, I'm going to focus on the external. I'll be focusing on fashion and beauty. So dressing in a way that makes me feel confident, selecting clothes that bring me joy. So I'll be getting dressed in an outfit every day, and I'll be wearing makeup every day as well. And like the level of dress and makeup will vary throughout, but the criteria will be, at least for clothes, selecting the things that bring me joy, dressing in a way that makes me feel confident, and also kind of makes me feel like the most me. I've talked about that too. I have pieces where I feel my most Shauna, my most self. And then with makeup, it's going to be doing this thing that I actually like. I mean, I like applying makeup. I find it relaxing and comforting. And I'm really interested to see how wearing my blazers at home, or like my dressiest things, how that affects my confidence and how that affects how I feel about myself. Do I really feel all that different? Or even like, this is one of my favorite sweaters. How do I feel wearing clothes like this every day for 2 weeks? Does it affect, that's the question, does it affect my confidence and my contentment? I'm calling these choices external because calling them superficial, I think, is inaccurate and takes away from some of the magic and joy I get, and I know a lot of you get, from putting on makeup or wearing a beautiful piece of clothing. The next 2 weeks are going to be internal work. Things that come from within, things that challenge my mindset or support a positive one. So I'm going to be doing daily gratitude, number 1. I've also created a 30-day journal prompt that's designed to get me thinking about my contentment and really focusing on what that means to me, what that looks like in various aspects of my life, and also kind of challenging negative ideas. So they're like a combination of easier and harder topics. We have 30 of them. The last kind of component is to be reading a handful of books that I find motivational or inspiring, uplifting, or things that challenge the way that I think, kind of in like the self-development realm, motivational, and also minimalism, because I think that there's a book by Joshua Becker, I think it's called The More of Less, and he talks about the power of owning less and, why that's important, and the implications and the power of that. And while that's not necessarily like you are a confident, brave, badass woman, it still, I think, conforms to the project by supporting contentment and, being a read that asked me to think about that. Now, I have some thoughts about the self-development field, and we're going to talk about that, I promise, but it'll be in just a little bit. The last 2 weeks is going to be a combination of both. So we're going to bring back the dressing and the makeup, and we're just going to continue the internal work. My feeling is that in terms of the individual aspects, I think the internal work is going to provide the bigger difference of the two, but I think combining them together is going to be the strongest. And when I was thinking about like what order to do things, being able to do internal work for 4 weeks instead of 2 and 2, I think would be more beneficial. So that's the way it's structured, the way it is. And I think it just kind of gives more time to notice changes, to, get into the groove and read books that, I guess get into the groove of reading, give time to reflect and all of that. So the goal is in part to challenge some of my skepticism. I think that the external factors can make a difference. I've really believed, I guess there's been two parts of me. The part of me that really believes the difference and the impact a good outfit and personal style can make. I believe that. But there's the other part of me that feels like I don't need to dress a certain way to feel a specific way about myself. Like, I think about, at least what always comes to mind when I'm thinking about this is I wrote my master's thesis, and it was an actual thesis. Like, it was a 200-page book. I wrote that in a summer. I wrote that in my room. I wrote that basically bun up, no makeup, in sweats. Really. I did my best work when I was the most comfortable. So part of me is like, could I have done differently if I had this kind of routine, or like I did the makeup in the morning? Not necessarily because I like the way I look more with makeup, but because the makeup routine and the applying and the joy behind that is meaningful and sets up a routine that is meaningful. Would things have gone differently? Would things have gone differently if I put on an outfit that I loved and only wore clothes that I loved? Would I feel differently about myself? Would I have done better work? And there is something to be said about showing up as the best version of yourself. And I do believe that it can bring confidence. But I think that there's like, I don't think that this is like 100% one way or the other. Most of our lives don't fall into being dressed up 100% of the time or being dressed down 100% of the time. So my feeling is that, or I guess my feeling is that at the end, I'm going to fall somewhere in the middle. But I guess I'm really interested to find out just how much of an impact the fashion and beauty has on my life. Really, I'm just so curious about it. And if nothing really changes, fine, that's a result. But if I feel like more inspired, more myself, nothing wrong with that. I think that's a beautiful thing to happen. And I guess the question here is, what does doing something that brings you joy every day, what does that do? Doing a thing every day, what does that do for your overall contentment and joy? It's a question here. And I think the second goal really is to see how the external and internal factors work together, like how much of an impact do doing these things regularly have on, how I feel about myself. And the last kind of goal is to kind of challenge some of the conventional ideas about self-development and maybe to confirm others as well. My journaling and gratitude practices have kind of been hit and miss and kind of all over the place. I'll do it for weeks here, or I'll do that for weeks there. And I very rarely have done both of them at the same time for like a month straight. So I think that's going to be a really beneficial thing. And just about everybody that, like every mental health professional I know, even the ones that are in my personal life, have spoken about the benefits of gratitude and journaling, and also the combination of them both. And I've honestly not been that great at doing them together. So I'm very much excited to see how those two things work together. But when it comes to the self-development world, I think it can be a little bit more tricky, because I have personally believed in the power of a good book. And there's a lot of books out there that a lot of people swear by, that a lot of people have said have changed my life. And there's two in particular for me. How to Do the Work by Nicole LePera, and The Upward Spiral by, I want to say Nick, last name is Korb. And I've talked about those books on the channel before. Those two have gotten me out of slumps. They have done really great things for me. They're both written by PhDs, and I think just the specific topics that they were talking about, I think, at least for me, those two topics, the fact that they're written by a PhD matters a lot. But there are other books where people are sharing their experience, or you have books about like essays and things like that are not necessarily like how to deal with generational trauma, where they're a little bit more lighthearted, but they can have big impacts too. I know for a lot of people, and habits aren't going to be a feature here, but a lot of people talk about how Atomic Habits have changed their life. There's so many people who have, come to love that book. And so I really think that there are books that can change our lives. There are books that can start us on our journey to healing or empower us to make decisions or start making decisions or start a new project or start to feel good about ourselves. And I'm not one to say if you find that in a book, shame on you. No, never. I don't think the field is entirely good or bad, but I also know that there's a lot of books in the self-development field that give really surface level and kind of superficial advice and somehow are trying to imply that can fix our deepest insecurities. And there's a lot of books out there that also don't go that deep into issues, but promise big results. And the fact that these two options or two, I guess these are the most extreme, the fact that they exist, supports my own opinion. Maybe I'm just preaching to the choir, self-verifying here that, the field isn't all one extreme or all of the other, and that both exist together. And so after talking with my friend about this, she doesn't really seem to buy that this is going to work because in her view, or at least my perception of her view, is that a lot of self-help or self-development is kind of that superficial thing and doesn't really get deep, And so how much can you really change or how much work can you do if you're always believing you need to be better, if you're always believing that you need to be doing more work? How does that help you feel more content, especially if it's illuminating more problems? But also they think that there are other things, other internal work aspects that are more important that you can't find in a book. She's somebody's opinion who I really respect. And I, stopped and I thought about it and I was like, you could very well be right. 100%. And it was her, it was this conversation that really solidified my belief that I feel like this is a good choice, because if I find at the end of the day that she's right, I'm open to her being right. I'm open to self-development only having a surface impact. If that is the case, that's a result. Having things be a no result is just as equivalent as a result. Something going as you didn't expect it is as good as it going as you expected. We learn from the no results just as much as we learn from the results. So at the end of the day, this challenge is meant to be somewhat fun and experimental. And I think a lot of us believe and have had recommendations for reading these kinds of books. And so I think this challenge is good for let me embrace that advice. Let me actually do it. I'm really hoping that I'll get something out of it. I guess in terms of internal work, when we talk about that, ultimately, folks, I think therapy is I feel like everybody can do therapy. And I feel like if I don't mention it, I'd be remiss. The reason why therapy is not being combined here is because 1, I don't have insurance, and 2, that's way too personal to talk about, and 3, a lot of people recommend reading this book to change your life. So we're going to do it. We're going to read the books to change our life. So I do think that this experiment is reproducible, but it's not going to hold up to a scientific study. It's not meant to be. But I guess the point is, if you want to follow along, go for it. If you want to do your own version, go for it. But I think the experience will change based on the books that you read and the internal work that you do. And saying I did internal work is not the same as everybody doing the same things. In terms of what I'm reading, I have 8 books right now. Some that I have physically, some that are online with my library. And there is, by the way, room to pick up more. So if there's a book that you would like me to read as part of this project, recommend it in the comments below. I'm happy to, I've created room in case there's a really good book that some of you are I would love for you to read it and kind of incorporate into your experience. I'm here for you. I'm here for that. Leave them in the comments. Just some of the physical books I have as options. Rising Strong by Brené Brown. This is my friend recommended this to me, not necessarily for the challenge, as a good book. And I think, I was the one who thought it'd be great for the challenge. This book, I think this says a lot about me. I was gifted this as a book. when perfect isn't good enough. All I want to say is I was gifted this by a professional. I think one of the potentially heavier books on the list, The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body and the Healing of Trauma. This is like one of the best books out there. At least this is what the folks are saying. And then the last one is 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think. This one isn't quite like inspirational kind of thing. It's something that I think is like interesting and could have potentially a mindset shift. If editing Shauna has more thoughts on books that I'm interested in reading, she'll let you know. So I was just showing you some of the books that I have in my possession, either that I own or have from the library. And there's a couple that I have placed requests for or are only available online. So I thought I would share some of the other ones that are, potentially can be read for this project. One that I should have somewhere in the period, probably week 3 of the project, if not week 4, hopefully, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That is requested. I also mentioned the Joshua Becker book. I went and looked at a lot of lists of like books that changed my life. The Alchemist is on everybody's book or everybody's list. I don't know if that one is totally for me, but I have it. Well, I don't own it, but I have it. I also have, I'm just looking at my holds list. I have The Mindset by Carol S. Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, Dweck. It's like a psychology of mindset book. There's a book I might get near the end of the challenge, Principles by Ray Dalio. I wanted to get The Mountain Is You by Brianna Weist, but we don't have any electronic copies of this book in my library, and we only have physical ones, and I am number 21 on the list, so that's not going to be read anytime soon. So those are just a couple more picks. Editing Shauna has been really sassy, and I have loved reading your comments where you've talked about editing you too. They've been hilarious. So let's continue. The guiding principles, or like the rules for this challenge, is that if I miss a day or 2 or however many days I miss, I'll extend the project by that number of days, which this is really applicable only, or at least what I'm imagining, to the fashion makeup portions of this challenge. I suffer from migraines, so missing days and not getting out of bed is likely. If we're talking about a 6-week period, I think it's bound to happen. So if you don't see this video in like exactly 6 weeks, you know why. It might take 7 weeks to actually come to video, or 8 weeks. The other project that I took a long ass time to get up, but the makeup one happened really quickly. So I'm trying to be a little gentle and like not force myself to do something if I'm feeling like I can't get out of bed, For the makeup portion, I'm going to be sticking with my spring makeup bag. I'm raising this point because I'm not going to be disregarding it or picking some kind of new products or anything. I'm just kind of going with the things that I've already picked. But just like the spring makeup bag, if I ever want to use a product for a look, I'm always welcome to pick something here. I very rarely do, and while I don't do my makeup 7 days a week now, I think doing that will, I'll get to be more creative and try some new looks, which is exactly what I'm hoping for. I think 80 to 90% of my looks are going to be from the spring makeup bag, and I'm guessing, maybe 10 to 20%, product kind of here or there will be picked up from my regular collection or my regular product storage. For makeup, the focus is really about having fun and enjoying the time in the process of putting on the makeup. For clothing, the focus is going to be on wearing things that bring joy, bring confidence, things that make me feel powerful and my most authentic self. I'm planning on taking pictures of at least the outfits every day. If we do 14 days, I'm hoping for 10 pictures. The goal is going to be 10. Okay, maybe the goal should be 14. So then if it happens to be 10, it's 10. I don't know if I'll take pictures of the looks every day. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. But yeah, I think I really want evidence of the wardrobe. I don't want to overcommit either, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. So I'm gonna do a mid challenge reflection on my own, and then I'll come back at week 6 and I'll let you know how things went. It probably won't come up on the last day. I'll probably want a little bit of space, and then we'll see. I think something of interest to note would be like, would I continue doing this after the challenge is over, and like what parts I want to continue doing after the challenge. I think also interesting is to think about if this actually brings contentment. That's a really interesting, that's the goal here. So does it bring contentment? I'd love to know. I think those are some of the 2 bigger ones. And also let me know if you have any questions you'd like me to think about or reflect on, or to keep in mind throughout the challenge. Okay, so some of my hypotheses. I think editing Shauna is going to have more hypotheses too. So we might have this is a scenario where I'll probably just have like a screen and there'll be, questions or my hypotheses there. I do think that I'm going to have a lot of fun with the makeup and clothing. I never wear makeup 7 days a week. So I think there's going to be just like a lot of fun and experimentation that's going to bring a lot of joy. The same is true for clothing. And because I've already kind of created a spring capsule. I'm just in the moment of weeding it down and finding the iteration that works. So I have some excitement about getting to play with my spring capsule. So I think there's going to be fun there. I think my ultimate opinion is going to be, this was fun, but probably not 7 days a week. That's kind of how I think it's going to go. Out of the 2 individually, I think the internal work is going to make the biggest difference, but I think the 2 are going to be stronger together. I am really excited about reading the books. I don't know how this is going to sound, but I'm going to say it anyways. I love to think and I love to reflect. I swear it's like a decade of university has beat it into me. It's like, wow, that was aggressive. Yeah, I feel like university has beat that habit into me, and to the point where I'm like, yes, reflection. And I think for some of you, it's like way too much, but for me, I'm like, yeah, let's bring on the reflection. And I think that I'm gonna really enjoy the reflection. I feel like I'm just gonna learn something. I know I'm gonna learn something. That's the video. I'm very excited to hear what you think. If you're gonna follow along, if you have book recommendations, leave them in the comments down below. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you again around here soon. Bye.